Teacher, we should probably get going. Right, the Guardian Fortress. Deep in the jungle, Yuki called out to Winner, who responded nervously. On his handheld D-storage was the map that Mirai had created. There was a blue icon indicating his current position, and a red icon indicating where the Mistymon was. Now the two were nearly overlapping. Everyone, be careful. ForgeBeamon and Maneuvermon are watching out for us from above. This jungle is their territory. They could jump out at us at any moment. Heeding the words of Suzune and Ryutaro, the Digimon stood ready to tackle any potential assailants, treading carefully with each step. Then, Panjamon, who was cutting through vines ahead of the group, murmured to itself, "No traps. How odd." Traps? Frigimon looked on in puzzlement while the lion Digimon responded with a nod. After my time fighting alongside the Mistymon, there would have been traps set up to keep enemies out. I suppose you could set up all kinds of traps in a jungle as dense as the spikes and spears and stuff. Assuming they were worried about rogue NPCs and humans, I would expect there to be more traps. So that would mean, Winner adjusted his glasses, that is, itself, the trap. They intend to lure us deep into the fortress. Everyone's expressions suddenly grew tense. Yuki, unable to bear the heavy atmosphere, attempted to raise a cheerful voice. Hey, I'm not really up for fighting. Let's break it instead. Anyone? We can't break it, you numbskull. Fine. Just before getting shut down by her partner, Impmon, after which point she resigned herself to patting the head of the Koporimon she was holding. At that moment, there was a whoosh of wind, and Maneuvermon and ForgeBeamon descended in front of Yuki and the others. Winnie! ForgeBeamon, did you see something? Yes. Just ahead, there is a large clearing where a bunch of Digimon are gathered. And also what? What's that? What? ForgeBeamon stood unsure, as Winner looked on inquisitively. Just then, they saw it. There was a large clearing with no trees, shaped like a corner of something. In the background, they could see a gigantic, rugged wooden building. Likely, this was the Guardian's fortress they had heard about. And lined up in front of the structure were numerous Ogremon, Gorillamon, and Betsumon, all surrounding a single magic warrior, a Mistymon, and their sights were set squarely on Yuki and the others. They've come. But the thing that stood out to Yuki and the others was none of this. Instead, it was the figure standing at the Mistymon's side, striking a heroic pose. Altea? Yuki and the others' voices rang out and echoed through the forest. Meanwhile, Altea nodded deeply as if pleased with himself, readying his D-storage alongside Espimon, currently shaking out of genuine guilt. Sorry, folks, but I'll be playing the bad guy today. As you're well aware, I am a state-of-the-art AI, so don't be caught lacking or else you'll be sent packing. Grar! The bats! Altea. As he let out those words, the Guardian Digimon cheered wildly. Hey, teacher, what's going on? How am I supposed to know? In response to Yuki's question, Winner shook his head, then pressed his aching temple. Digimon Liberator Side Story, DEBUG.24-2, Miracle, Part 2, Dynasmon X Antibody. I thought you were just going to use Cool Boy's deck as is. It goes against my principles to use something created by my loathsome opponent. Besides, he had a lot of cards. It wasn't hard to put together a new deck. Shortly before that fateful meeting between the Guardians and Yuki, Altea and Mistymon sat around a table in a room inside the fortress, Digimon cards laid out between them. Espimon stood by as a witness to the match, watching with bated breath. Enjoying the unfamiliar sensation of moving the memory gauge by hand, Altea glanced at Mistymon. Although it's a bit clumsy with physical cards, it put together a top-notch deck from scratch. And its playing is so polished that it is hard to believe that this is its first match. It can't have been long since it got its hands on Cool Boy's D-storage. Even by this world's standards, maybe it's because Mistymon is the strategical mastermind for the Guardians, or maybe it's because it put the effort into studying this card game. When Altea passed his turn, Mistymon spoke to him, looking down at its cards. How long have you known? What's that now? What you said earlier. You mentioned the words of the great Dalphomon. Oh, that? Dalphomon's words were unknowable to anyone in this world, let alone Altea. So, upon learning that Altea was aware of them, the Mistymon became enraged. It's simple, really. A single inference based on the assumption that you are kind. Passing the turn while deftly positioning his cards on the playing field, Altea spoke. You were suffering. It's true that you were attempting to fill a role that you were not used to, but clearly you were a middleman between your subordinates and something else. The only Digimon who could stand above you is Dalphomon. I don't know the full extent of it, but according to Espimon's report, this entity appears to be something like a god. Are you telling me that Espimon there has been hiding in the fort all this time? Yeah, I was here the whole time. Wait, you've got to be kidding me. As Mistymon sighed, Espimon looked around as though it had done something wrong. Meanwhile, Altea continued paying no mind to this. And that's not the only thing Espimon's report revealed. It showed that you, who are normally so wise, have been taking a short-sighted course of action. The forced tributes. I already know. There is something that you must pray for, to the point that you will rush to offer things, and it is something that you cannot share with your subordinates. In addition, there have been a string of natural disasters in Cross Connectia. Altea paused for a moment to let the play proceed. So, Cross Connectia is dying? That's right, and the great Dalphomon has chosen to go down with the world. The Mistymon sighed so deeply as to empty its lungs entirely. If Digimon have such an organ, then bit its lip. If this world dies, so too will this world's Digimon. It's reasonable, it's natural. This is the end point of the wild that we have upheld. But you weren't convinced. The great Dalphomon clearly knows that there is an alternative to simply accepting its demise, but it did not choose that option. When I realized this, it made me question my master for the first time. Mistymon's hand clenched, still holding its cards. Can you imagine it? Your god tells you that the world is doomed, and despite there being a potential to save it, they show no interest in pursuing that option. Would you be able to pass that on to your subordinates? Well, I couldn't do it. I hid it all, labeled any newcomer who appeared as an enemy, and spent endless days doing what felt like procrastinating. My every action lacked even a shred of sincerity. No one will blame you. That's the problem. Altea said nothing. Even as Mistymon said this, Altea's artificial intelligence did not produce the option to blame his new friend. It was incapable of producing any options. You should talk to my friends. We can present you with an option. Yes, of course I will have to. I will do so regardless of how this match plays out. The problem is, where does your heart lie? Pathetic, isn't it? No, not at all, but I understand. Altea lined up his Digimon in the battle area and ended his turn. Even though the Mistymon was playing well, the battle was tilted in favor of Altea, who had the upper hand. On his next turn, if he sent in his entire line of Digimon for an all-out attack, his victory was all but ensured. Actually, there's no need to worry about that. Mistymon, quite the optimism you have there. What makes you think that? 2 reasons. Altea held up 2 fingers. Firstly, I anticipate that our friends are going to blow your worries away. They always manage to set me on a new course with words that I cannot predict. Unpredictable, huh? Even to you? Truly, it's wildly unexpected. And secondly, Altea looked directly at Mistymon as he said this. You may just exceed my expectations. In other words, it could turn out that you are so much kinder than I could even begin to predict, to the point of absurdity even, so much so that you couldn't actually hate a human if you tried. That is an interesting speculation, but there's no way to prove it. No, it's easy. With that, Altea passed the turn to Mistymon. If you can turn things around from here, it will prove your kindness. I've established quite a large line of Digimon on my field. I have largely analyzed your deck. With a typical build, a comeback would be impossible 9 times out of 10. If there is a card in your deck that could turn the tables in this situation, it would have to be your most hated. Oh yes. The Mistymon interrupted Altea as it pulled out a card from its hand. That card, stacked on top of the DIGIMON X antibody, is the trump card of the person Mistymon hated most. Omnimon X antibody, you've got me. That's right, Altea, I win. However, a stifled laugh escaped Mistymon's throat, perhaps in joy at its narrow comeback or perhaps in admiration at having its move read. I'm also utterly defeated. So Altea, Yep, I lost. Why are you so proud of that? I lost, which means that my friend is stronger. Altea stood proudly in front of Winner, who couldn't help but get in a jab. Now I am with the Guardians. If you want to go beyond, you'll have to do so over my dead body. Master, are you sure about this? A promise is a promise, and Espimon, get ready for it. Next to the bewildered Espimon, Altea stood shadowboxing at the air for some reason. Seeing the confused look on the faces of Winner and others who were unsure of what to do next, Mistymon sighed and stepped forward. Quieting the murmuring Digimon around him by raising a single hand, the magic warrior spoke. I beg of you, stow your weapons. We have no intention to fight. I must also apologize for the rudeness shown at the spawn point before. But please, spare my troops. As it said this, Mistymon began to raise both hands. This was a signal of surrender. It was just at that moment. There was a sound of kicking at the ground. She came rushing up to Mistymon with light footsteps. Then she, as she had done many times before, grabbed on to Mistymon's hands as he held them up. Nice to meet you, Mistymon, Yuki said with a smile akin to a blooming flower. I want to be your friend. Haha. In the deepest part of the forest, in Dalphomon's domain, Cool Boy slumped as if his strength had been drained while he watched a projection of the scene in front of the fort. A weary, listless laugh kept slipping from his mouth. Is something funny, Harold? Dalphomon's voice rang out as if in doubt. Cool Boy nodded repeatedly, unintentionally forgetting the decorum one ought to show before a god. Yes, I couldn't help but laugh, and it was a bit of a relief. A relief? Yao did great. She sent the perfect team to trek through this world. In the projection, Mistymon ordered the Digimon behind it to put down their weapons. The Digimon looked bewildered, yet somewhat happy. They must have noticed the softening of Mistymon's demeanor. The Digimon's hostility toward humans must be deep-rooted, but I am sure the misunderstanding will be cleared up. Panjamon and the other Digimon will solve it, along with the debugging team. Cool Boy laughed for a moment and then turned to speak to Dalphomon. They will come here, Dalphomon, to defeat me. No, to save this world, and I'm sure I'll be scolded too, Cool Boy thought. But somehow, he didn't mind. It's kind of silly, he thought. But he felt like he had been asking for it all his life. Around him, the forest, the air, even the slime mold stirred. Dalphomon was thinking. Nothing that could be predicted by that wildness is occurring. Instead, the world is heading in an unpredictable direction. Once the surroundings quieted down again, one overwhelming presence remained. A huge beast reminiscent of all the beast Digimon that have been identified so far, but in fact, not like any of them. The Digimon god of this world, Dalphomon. I'll continue observing. Yes, by all means do. Dalphomon. Cool Boy flinched at Dalphomon's appearance, but eventually took a slow breath and smiled again. I'm sure you'll find it interesting.